If I could only hold one investment for the next 30 years, I would choose a global index fund. It's the easiest way to own a slice of thousands of companies around the world with one simple investment. The problem is that there are loads of options that at first glance can look almost identical. So in this video, I'll explain what a global index fund is, the things you should look for, walk through the most popular choices here in the UK, and then I'll rank my personal favorites at the end. We'll start with the basics. What is a global index fund? Well, a global index fund is simply a ready-made basket of stocks from all over the world. US companies make up over half of most global index funds in a minute, but you still got plenty of companies from the UK, Europe, Japan, and emerging markets like India and Brazil. These are all wrapped into a single investment. Now, most global funds track a stock market index such as the FTSE All-World Index or the MSCI All Country World Index, often shortened to ACWI. A global stock market index is simply a list of stocks from across the world used to track the performance of the global stock market. These are market capitalization weighted, meaning the larger companies take up a bigger portion of the index and smaller companies make up a smaller portion. If a large company falls in value, it automatically becomes a smaller part of the index, and vice versa. So naturally, if a certain country's stock market begins performing well, it will become a bigger part of these stock market indexes. And if a country's stock market performs relatively poorly, such as Japan's over the past 45 years, then it will become a smaller part of those indexes. And it's the self-cleansing nature of global index funds that makes them attractive hands-off investments, because the portfolio quietly shifts towards winners and away from losers over time without you having to do anything. Now, there are usually two different types of global index funds products that you'll see. ETFs, which stand for exchange-traded funds, and you can buy and sell these on the stock market as easily as you can buy and sell shares of a company, and mutual funds, which you buy through your investing platform at a daily price. So, with so many global index funds out there that are all trying to do the same thing, what are the differences you should look out for? Well, there's a quick 6-point checklist that I use each time, and I think it covers the key things to compare. One is fees, sometimes abbreviated to OCF, which stands for ongoing charges figure. This is the annual cost of holding the fund, usually expressed as a percentage. For example, if the OCF was 0.3% and you had £1,000 invested, then you'd pay £3 every year in fees. The differences might sound small, but these can compound into tens of thousands of pounds in lost returns over decades. Two is the replication method. This refers to how the index fund providers aim to replicate the performance of the index. Most large providers use physical replication, meaning they will buy the stocks of the companies within the index in similar proportions. They'll either use full replication or sampling, which is where they don't buy every stock in the index, but they buy just enough to accurately replicate the index's performance. Some others use synthetic replication with fancy financial instruments like swaps. This can keep costs low, but I prefer physical replication for simplicity. The third thing is dividend treatment. Some companies within these indexes will pay dividends, and there's two ways they can get passed on to you. Accumulating funds will automatically reinvest any dividends back into the fund. Distributing funds will pay out any dividends to you as cash into your investment account. For long-term regular investing, accumulating funds make more sense, although I sometimes opt for distributing just because seeing dividend notifications can be quite motivating. Four is the index it tracks. Major global indexes like the FTSE All-World and the MSCI ACWI have a similar goal, which is to track the performance of the world's stock market. But they each have a slightly different number of companies and weigh countries a bit differently. Five is provide a reputation and fund size. I will make sure that the index fund provider is large and has a good reputation, just to ensure nothing odd happens with the fund itself. The likes of Vanguard, iShares by BlackRock, Spider by State Street, Invesco, HSBC, Amundi, and UBS all have long histories and scale. And when it comes to fund size, we're referring to the total amount of money invested in that index fund. In general, the bigger the size, the easier it is to buy and sell without a large spread, referring to the difference between the price you pay and the price you actually buy at. Although this difference tends to be quite small and should be minimal for any of the large providers we've just mentioned. Number 6 is currency. A lot of these global index funds will have options in multiple currencies, usually depending where the fund is listed. Even though the stock stocks themselves are mostly priced in dollars, I'd always opt for a GBP-denominated fund. It just saves me from having to pay any foreign exchange fees that most investment providers charge, and there's no real benefit to opting for a different currency. Okay, well, I think it was good to go through this checklist before moving on to the actual funds, because I'll be making reference to a lot of these points throughout the rest of the video. Now, I said at the start that there's two types of index funds, ETFs and mutual funds. And we're going to start with ETFs because they are available on a lot of the most popular investment platforms here in the UK, and specifically the three big global index ETFs that I have used in the 5.5 years that I've been investing. Now, I started with the Vanguard FTSE All World ETF, ticker symbol VWRL, which is the distributing version denominated in GBP. This ETF tracks the FTSE All World Index and gives broad exposure to thousands of companies across nearly 50 countries. The fee is 0.22%, which isn't the absolute cheapest, but it's still very reasonable. I like it because it's straightforward, widely available, and backed by a provider that actually popularized index investing in Vanguard. I also like that there's a choice between accumulating and distributing versions. So I could opt for distributing funds since I like to see that cash hitting my portfolio regularly, even if I just go and reinvest it afterwards. It wouldn't make sense to do if I had an investment provider with high transaction fees, but thankfully I do not. But eventually I moved my global index fund to the Invesco FTSE All World ETF, ticker symbol FTWG. Now, this was mainly because this ETF tracks the same index, but comes with a lower fee of 0.15%. I'd assume it achieves this because it holds a smaller sample of companies when tracking the index. It currently holds around 2,400 stocks compared to the Vanguard fund, which holds closer to 3,600 stocks. It's also newer than the Vanguard funds, so it's a bit hard to judge whether or not it's just as effective at tracking the index despite owning substantially fewer companies. But Invesco is a well-known, reputable provider, and this one has done a good job of tracking the index closely so far. Once again, it offers both an accumulating and distributing version, so I have the flexibility to choose. However, I eventually swapped that global ETF out for the one that I use today, the Spider MSCI All Country World ETF, ticker symbol ACWI. Unlike the previous two ETFs, this tracks a different global index, the MSCI All Country World Index, often shortened to ACWI. It holds fewer companies overall and can be a tad more US heavy at times. But the long-term behavior of the two indexes has been very similar. And ultimately, I just want to invest in an index fund that tracks the world stock market. I don't care too much about the tiny differences each index has in what it perceives to be the world stock market. The most attractive thing here is the low fee, which is currently 0.12%. This makes it one of the cheapest global index funds from a top-tier provider. It's also a much larger fund than the Invesco one, although it does remain smaller than Vanguard's. The one compromise is that it's accumulating only, so it will reinvest any dividends received from the companies within the fund rather than pay them out in cash, which is sad for my dividend notifications. But you know, it's a price that I don't mind paying, I guess. Anyway, these are the three global index ETFs that I have owned over my 5+ years of investing. And there's a couple of honorable mentions too. The iShares MSCI ACWI ETF with ticker symbol SSAC. This fund is run by BlackRock, the other giant in the space alongside Vanguard. It's a strong option from a very reputable provider available across most platforms, but the fee is a bit higher than Spider's equivalent index fund. And finally, I want to mention the Amundi Prime All Country World ETF with ticker symbol PACW. This tracks a selective global index, which covers about 3,500 large and medium-sized companies globally, accounting for roughly 85% of the world's stock market. Now, selectives indices don't carry the same weight as those of FTSE Russell or MSCI, but that means it can be cheaper for index funds to license them. This is how selective differentiates itself from the big three index fund providers, and I believe that's why Amundi has managed to create this index fund with a super low fee of 0.07%. I think it was only launched in March 2024, and while it doesn't track an index from a huge provider, this ETF is still a really solid option if you're looking for an ultra low fee ETF. Also, if you want to learn a bit more about what global index funds are available on all different platforms here in the UK, we've got you covered. We have a free global index fund cheat sheet that breaks down how to read a fund name and covers the key information about loads of different global index funds on each platform. We've popped a link to it down in the description of this episode, so be sure to check it out if you want to find out what's available on your preferred platform. Before I decide on my favorite, I want to quickly mention a couple of mutual funds. As I said earlier, these are funds that you buy directly through your investment platform. They don't trade every minute of the day, and that can help keep the costs much lower. But the key with these and all the ETFs mentioned here is to consider the total total cost of ownership. That is, adding the fund's annual fee to your platform's account fee and any additional charges so you know your true annual cost. A popular mutual fund is the HSBC FTSE All World Index Fund. Again, this tracks the FTSE All World Index and offers both accumulating and distributing options with a very low fee of just 0.13%. It's a great option if you want a simple monthly direct debit into a global fund. But just be aware of any platform fees, because mutual funds tend to be offered on the more traditional investment providers, and they tend to charge more. Finally, there's the mutual fund that both myself and Jamie invest into within our pensions, the Vanguard FTSE Global All Cap Index Fund. Unlike every other index we've mentioned today, this one includes smaller companies as well as medium and large companies. That's why this fund owns over 7,000 stocks, giving arguably the most complete picture of the global stock market out of any funds that I've spoken about today. That does come with a higher fee of 0.23%, but in the grand scheme of things, that isn't huge. So I'm very happy for this to be my retirement fund. Now, when it comes to choosing a global index fund, my approach is simple because I want something that I can stick with for years. I pick a global fund that I trust, I add to it every single month, and I do this for years to come. I also keep an eye on fees, but I don't obsess over a few basis points or the total number of holdings. In my experience, the worst outcome is analysis paralysis. A near perfect fund you start investing in today beats a non-existing perfect fund that you never buy. That said, here are my top 3 funds. In third place, we have the Vanguard FTSE All World ETF, an incredibly reputable provider with broad coverage and fairly close to full physical replication. In second is the Vanguard FTSE Global All Cap Index Fund, mainly because it's the most diversified you can get, even if it comes with a slightly higher fee. And it's also a mutual fund, so it's not as broadly available. But my top pick is also the largest investment in my stocks and shares ISA, and that is the SPDR MSCI All Country World ETF. It has a very low fee, it's run by one of the world's largest investment providers, and it gives broad global diversification. Basically, everything you're looking for in a global index fund. But as I said, don't get too bogged down in the details. I would happily invest in every single global index fund in this video for decades. And let me know in the comments what global index fund you invest in, and if any in this video have given you food for thought. And also be sure to subscribe to this channel for more UK-focused investing content. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.